Magic Earth, Chapter 6. The Low Whispering Fog. The snow was fine and insistent, beating sideways as Jack reached the first stone wall marking Eldoria's vegetable gardens. By this hour, the kitchens should have smelled of bone broth and day-old bread, but the wind carried almost nothing, perhaps a faint whisper of tired embers. The city was where it had always been, with winter-darkened roofs and wells covered by planks. What was different was the ground, a skin of very low fog, spread across the neighborhoods closest to the river like a poorly laid sheet. Spes had warned him, "Do not trust the immediate." Jack repeated the phrase like holding a stone in his pocket to remember the way back. From the top of the embankment, the fog looked harmless. Early evening moisture, nothing more. Men talked on the corner. A woman carried a basket. A child chased a dog, and no one worried. No fainting. No screaming. That's what made it worse. Jack entered through the side of the gardens, jumping the wall where the stones were loose. He avoided the main street, preferring the narrow corridor between the tannery and the forge, where the smell of leather would mask anything else. Each corner required him to hold his breath for a second before moving his foot. He was a fugitive. Any face that recognized him might turn him in out of goodwill, fear, or for a reward. In the first open doorway, 2 women were washing pots with steaming water. The fog drifted slowly past their ankles, and they didn't even look down. "Please," Jack said, softly, without stepping inside. "Leave the city. Go south now. Warn the neighbors along the way." The 2 exchanged glances with the patience of people who have heard someone else's hurry before. One of them smiled, more out of courtesy than amusement. "Because of a little dew, young man?" she asked. "The king hasn't even rung the risk bell." "Don't wait for a bell," Jack said. "It's serious. Don't argue, just walk." They shrugged. Jack didn't press. He moved like water flowing under a table. Window, door, alley. He repeated the warning to a blacksmith, an onion seller, an old man sitting on a doorstep with a blanket over his knees. In everyone, the same strangeness. "Leave for what reason?" "The king hasn't ordered it. This is just winter." The old man, especially, replied with a casual wave of his hand. "When there is danger, the bell calls us. It always has." Spes had also said, "Noyle arrives as certainty." Jack moved on, refusing to argue with certainties. Crossing Well Street, the fog touched his boot top. He instinctively flinched, more from Spes's warning than from any real sensation. The mist didn't burn, didn't smell, didn't feel colder than normal. It simply was, and its presence seemed to convince people that nothing was happening. Because, in fact, nothing was happening. Yet. He skirted the lower square and took the back alley toward Traveler's Rest Hill, his family's tavern. Every 10 steps, he mentally counted the lighted windows, the ajar doors, the shadows of the guards. When he reached the staircase alley, his heart was pounding like a war drum. The fog hadn't risen here. The pavement was drier, and that gave him a cruel relief. Where the fog didn't reach, the danger seemed smaller. And that's why the city slept with its eyes open. The Traveler's Rest was surrounded by Iro guards, 6, perhaps 8, rotating positions with the tense discipline of those who have received an order they don't understand, and for that very reason, execute it rigidly. Their spears formed angles. Their blue cloaks had the wind crest embroidered with thick thread. In the upstairs window, the curtain in Jack's room moved slightly, and his stomach plummeted. It could be Liz. It could be Melanie. It could just be the air. He couldn't get closer. He needed someone neutral. He looked for an unfamiliar face, an outsider with no ties. He found a traveler with a road-stained coat, selling leather straps from a crate. "A favor?" Jack asked without removing his hood, displaying 2 copper coins. "Take a message to the tavern owner. Say it came from a boy in a gray hood. It's urgent." The man weighed the offer in his gaze. Jack added a 3rd coin. The traveler nodded. Practical. Jack wrote quickly with charcoal. Father, the fog is the enemy. Leave when you can. If you can't, do not breathe deeply. Windows closed. Do not follow new orders. J. He folded it small and tucked it under the strap of a leather belt. The traveler walked up to the guards. The youngest raised a hand to stop him. Words were exchanged. The crate was searched, the straps lifted, felt, and shaken. Jack bit his lip. A sergeant took the strap with the message, examined it, and found nothing. He knocked on the door with the tip of his gauntlet. The wood opened a crack. A familiar hand. Theodore's hand, calloused and firm, snatched the bundle and closed the door again. Jack almost smiled. Almost. A bugle sounded from the direction of the well. The same sergeant unrolled a parchment and read aloud. By order of the king, residents of this lane and the tavern hill must remain in their homes until further notice. Those who disobey will be detained. The sentence was clean, round, without shouting. People nodded as if receiving the weather forecast. A neighbor closed the window from the inside, without hurrying the latch. Jack gripped the stone wall with his fingers until it hurt. The message had arrived, but the king was locking the exit from both the outside and the inside. Spes's harsh memory returned. Noyle does not tear down the door. He teaches you to keep it shut. He was not foolish enough to attempt heroism in front of 8 spears. Nor could he stay there until the shift change. Every minute increased the chance of a face turning and recognizing him as the hall boy. He thought about throwing a second message through the bedroom window, but that would require getting too close. And even if he succeeded, what would change? Theodore couldn't leave. Melanie couldn't leave. Liz. He pushed the thought away. He took 2 steps back, then 2 more, vanishing into the fold of the alley. He didn't run. Running draws eyes. At a slow march, he circled the block toward Market Street. The fog there was already licking the doorstep, but had not yet risen. He saw a boy delivering milk, and, in the middle of the delivery, pausing for a second, as if he had forgotten why he was holding the jug. Then he continued. Small pauses, small forgettings, nothing to scare, everything to condition. On the corner, a young man was pulling a donkey with sacks and repeating, for anyone who cared to listen, "The king asks everyone to stay home until the 3rd bell. It is for the good of all." The words were the same as the parchment, but they came out of a chapped, cold mouth, with the naturalness of someone repeating a recipe. Jack felt the impulse to say, "I understand." He swallowed the word like a thorn. He looked one last time at the bedroom window. He wanted to see a gesture, a drawing, a shadow. He saw only still fabric, and on the ground of the lower part, the fog rose by an inch. It was time to leave, before it became natural to stay. The exit via the South Hill offered Jack a view he didn't want, but needed. Eldoria in miniature, from the edge of the world. The fog occupied about 1/10 of the streets, the lower ones, the ones near the river, the ones with perpetually damp floors. The main gate remained open. 2 guards were tossing pebbles, another was lining up the spears. The bell chimed once, marking the routine change of position. The important things seemed to remain important. This is how a city was lost. Jack walked parallel to the road on a hunter's path, keeping out of sight of anyone coming or going. He didn't carry the false courage of one who believes in a miracle. He carried the harsh responsibility of one who knows nothing will save him if he makes a false step. Every 100 steps he stopped and looked back. At each stop, he confirmed the same thing. Nothing was happening. And because of that, everything was already happening. Do not trust the immediate. It was Spes's dictum, and now it sounded almost like the world's mockery. Jack thought about going back and causing some kind of disorder. A fire in a warehouse, a horse loose in the square, anything to break the habit. but the guards at the tavern made the impulse a trap. Disorder calls soldiers. Soldiers call names. Names call hands. At the stone marker on the trail, Jack stopped and wrote another message, this time for himself. Breathe short. Observe. Do not agree. He folded the piece of leather and stuffed it under his boot splint. It seemed foolish, but it was a way to anchor himself against the urge to say yes, without thinking. As he emerged from the shadow of the trees onto the plain, the wind gained space and silence. The snow didn't crunch, it slid. The wagon tracks from the day before were less deep, as if the ground wanted to forget them. Jack quickened his pace. If he reached Spes before the end of the afternoon, there would still be light to discuss a proper plan. Not a grand plan, not a feat, a sequence of small enemy mistakes, well aligned. He thought of Theodore reading the note and slamming his hand on the table, not in rage, but to feel the wood, as he did when he needed to decide quickly. He thought of Melanie gathering the essentials into an invisible bundle, making silent decisions that no one would see. He thought of Liz doing a silly 15-second trick, perhaps repeated to distract from the fear. The image cut more than it helped. The urgency turned into pain in his chest. Halfway to the south, he saw 2 stopped wagons. The drivers were talking softly. The fog hadn't reached this far. Jack greeted them with a nod that didn't invite conversation. One of them returned the gesture, automatically. No one asked why a young man was walking alone into the cold. This is also how a world was lost. Everyone occupying their task until the task became everything. When the smaller tower of Arrow's castle disappeared behind the gentle slope of the land, Jack finally released the air he had been accumulating without realizing it. His body reacted with trembling hands. He closed his gloves and continued, looking for Spes's footprints, long, regular strides, semi-covered by the fresh snow. He followed the line like reading a thread of history. Turning the tongue of the hill, he saw him. Hood low, dark cloak, hands tucked into his sleeves, the cadence of one who has walked a lot and learned not to fight the wind. Spes did not stop when he sensed footsteps behind. He simply spoke, as if the conversation had been interrupted a minute earlier. "You returned early." "I returned because there's nothing to be done there," Jack replied, not masking his anger. "The fog already takes 10% of the city. No one understands anything, and the king ordered them to stay home. My family is surrounded. The message got through. They can't leave." Spes nodded, a small gesture. He did not say, "I'm sorry." He only said, "Then the time has grown shorter." "Is that Noyle?" Jack burst out, all at once, stopping in front of Spes to wrench the answer out with his eyes. "I can't go back and say, 'Wait,' without knowing what I'm waiting for. The fog doesn't kill, doesn't touch, doesn't hurt. It's just fog." Spes maintained his pace for 2 or 3 movements, then stopped as well. "Noyle acts with intelligence," he said, without grandeur. "He does not appear where the sword would be useful. He teaches you to agree with what you would already do. People see and feel a harmless mist, and that is the danger. What is harmless becomes standard. The standard becomes order. And when the order arrives, no one asks where it came from." "What is the plan, then?" Jack moved closer. "Tell me we'll do this, this, and that, and I'll do it. Say we can fight, and I'll fight. Say we can stop it, and I'll go first." Spes took a deep breath, like someone choosing words that will hurt just the same. Against Noyle, there is no chance. The silence that followed was not the same as the open plain. It was different, the kind that remains after someone says a truth that is too simple. "If there is no chance, why did you return to the 3 kingdoms?" Jack asked, his voice rising half an octave. "Why did you take me from Eldoria, lead me to the kings, make me circulate among armies, if this was the outcome?" "Because I needed to gauge how much men have changed," Spes answered. "And because maybe, just maybe, we could unite the 3 plants of Elyon. The phrase hung between them like cold metal. Unite. Jack bit the word. Do you have any idea where they are? Not an idea, Spes said, with a slight upturn of his mouth that almost smiled, but didn't. Certainty. Jack waited. The wind moved a loose thread of Spes's hood. The plane, patient, watched. Where? 1 in each castle, Spes replied. And they always have been. Jack opened his mouth to retort, a ready, that doesn't make sense. He swallowed it. It did, if he thought as Spes thought. The kingdoms built their grandeur around what they didn't understand, decorating it to call it sacred. If the plants were ancient adornments, reliquaries, doorstops, unused banners, stones and wells, they would be protected by custom, not by force. And if we succeed? He finally asked. If we find all 3, if we unite them, if we... He searched for the word, do what Elyon tried. Spes shook his head, a short no. Do not promise the world what Elyon did not deliver. Even united, the plants are not a spell. They are a limit, a reminder. Perhaps they will give us a space for decision. Perhaps doesn't save my family, Jack cut in. Neither does bravado, Spes retorted in the same tone. What remains for us is what has always remained for men when they no longer knew where to run. Routine, rust, habit. If we remove 1 screw from the right place, the whole castle groans. And when it groans, someone looks. And when someone looks, for a second, the order loses its disguise. Jack wanted to hate the answer. Instead, he recognized that the same logic had gotten him out of the tower with an iron blade and a worn latch. It wasn't destiny. It was wear and tear. With a deep, thoughtful breath, Spes turned to Jack. If you want to save a family, perhaps Iroh is our first option. The wind coming from the north was no longer the same. It carried a strange scent, not of smoke or iron, but of something ancient being erased. The kind of air that suddenly makes the world feel old. Jack and Spes walked without haste, because haste and despair are almost the same thing. The white plain stretched ahead like a clean sheet of paper, and behind them, the horizon line already hid Eldoria under a pale glow. For a time, neither of them spoke. There was one kind of silence that was for thinking, and another that was for not falling. Theirs was both at the same time. Jack was the first to break it. If the plants are in each castle, and if Iroh has one, why go south? Because we don't know if there are still castles. Spes replied. Do you think Eldoria has already fallen? Spes hesitated. His face was hard to read, even in the light of the white sky. Perhaps. Or perhaps it is in the process of falling, which is worse. Cities that fall slowly still believe they are standing. Jack looked back, but could no longer see anything beyond the uniform veil of distance. No tower, no bell, only the color gray mixing with the snow. It seemed impossible that, hours earlier, he had walked through those streets, spoken to those people, seen guards at the doors and curtains moving. All of it seemed like a dream, or the memory of a memory. What if it's already too late? He asked, his voice lower. If Noyle has already taken everything, Spes thought before answering, then what we call the world will need to start over. But not here. And where then? To the south. The answer came simply. For everything that is born, the north is what hardens. The south is what still breathes. Jack frowned. And you think that there... He searched for the words. Exists something that can face Noyle? I don't know, Spes admitted. I don't know the totality of his strength, nor his cunning. Noyle is not a creature, Jack. He is a direction. He is the result of everything men have ignored for too long. I felt him grow while I was exiled. He was a thought-gaining body, a collective will to give up, not to think, to obey without realizing they obeyed, as if the world's fatigue had decided to breathe on its own. He looked at the horizon, where the white was turning almost blue. If we stay too close, we will merely become part of him. So the best chance is running away? The word tasted bitter on Jack's tongue. Spes stopped. Running away is when you abandon something. We are not abandoning. We are going after what can still resist. Perhaps in the south, we will find traces of what Elyon tried to create, or the right people to start anew, or nothing. But even nothing is better than Noyle's corrupted everything. Jack was quiet. He felt his throat tight, the cold seeping through the seams of his coat. Every sentence from Spes made sense, and yet it hurt, because everything he wanted, everything was behind him, inside that fog that still seemed harmless. He looked at the ground and whispered, "My father won't leave. He never leaves anything unfinished. My mother will wait. And Liz. She still believes I'll come back with an answer." "Then come back with one," Spes said. "But not now. To return now would be just to die the same way they will." Jack took a deep breath. The air burned his chest like cold fire. "What if they are already dead?" Spes replied calmly, but there was weight in his words. "Then let them die knowing someone kept walking." The boy looked away. For a moment, tears wanted to come, but they didn't. Perhaps the cold had frozen them first. "It's easy for you to say," he murmured. "You don't have anyone trapped in there." Spes looked at him for an instant. "I do," he simply said, "and that is why I know I cannot go back." The sentence hung between them like a confession that needed no context. They continued walking. The wind blew differently, coming from the east now. The sky was darkening slowly. Jack stopped one last time and looked back. On the distant line, a white band covered half the horizon. Eldoria seemed asleep under a sheet. He knew that in a few hours, no one would notice the cold, nor the sound of the bell, nor the color of the sky. Everything would seem normal. And that was exactly how Noyle won. When he turned around again, Spes was waiting a few steps ahead. His gaze was firm, without haste, but with purpose. Jack walked up to him. "So, that's it? We're going south?" he asked. "Yes." Spes' voice held no doubt, no solace. "The south is the last place where the world has not yet given up on thinking." Jack nodded. He felt his legs grow heavy, and his heart lighten, as if the pain of acceptance was less cruel than that of resistance. "Then let's go." Spes took the first step. Jack followed him. The snow crunched, long and firm, as if the very ground acknowledged the decision. Behind them, the north began to disappear. Ahead of them, the south waited. Not as a promise, but as a possibility.